हेलो एवरीवन। इस वीडियो में हम क्लास 10th फूड बिन विदाउट फीट का चैप्टर फर्स्ट रीड करेंगे जिसका नाम है अ टाइप ऑफ सर्जरी। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं। I was really worried about Ricky this time. I had pulled up my car when I saw him in the street with his mistress, and I was shocked at his appearance. He had become ugly, fat like a bolted sausage with a leg at each corner. His eyes bloodshot and roaming, started straight ahead, and his tongue rooted from his jaws. Mr. Pufre hastened to explain he was so listless. Mr. Harriet, he seemed to have no energy. I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition, so I have been giving him some little straws between meals to build him up. Some malt and cod liver oil and a blow of Horlicks at might to make his sleep. Nothing much really. And did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? Oh, I did for a bit, but he seemed to be so weak I had to relent. His does love cream cakes and chocolate, so I cannot bear to refuse him. I looked down. I looked down again. I looked down again at the little dog. That was so trouble. Ricky's only fault was greedy. He had never been no. He refused to refuse food. He would tuckle a meal at my hour on the day or night, and I wondered about all the things Mr. Puffley had not maintained. Are you giving him plenty of exercises? Well, he has his little walks with me, as you can see. But Hodgkins, the gardener, has been down with lumbo, so there has been no ring throwing lately. I try to sound a server now. I really mean this. If you don't cut his food right down and give him more exercise, he is going to be really ill. You must harden your heart and keep him on a very strict diet. Mr. Puffre wrung her hands. Oh, I will, Mr. Harriet. I am sure you are right, but it is so difficult, so very difficult. She set off, head down, along the road, as if determined to put the new regime into practice immediately. I watched their progress with growing corners. Tricky was strutting along in his little trade coat. He had a whole wardrobe of these coats for the cold weather and a raincoat for the wet days. He struggled on dropping in his harness. I thought, uh, I thought it would not be long before I had from Mr. Puffle. The expected call came within a few days. Mr. Puffre was destitute. Tricky would eat nothing, refuse even his favorite dishes, and besides, he had doubt of vomiting. He spent all his time lying on a rug, painting. Did not want to go for work. Did not want to do anything. I had made my plans in advance. The only way was to get Ricky out of the house of a period. I suggest that he be hospitalized for about a fortnight to be kept under observation. The poor lady almost swooned. He was sure he would pine or die if he did not see her every day. But I took a film line. Ricky was very ill, and this was the only way to save him. In fact, I thought it best to take him without delay, and followed by Mr. Buffet. Welling, I marched out the car carrying the little dog wrapped in a blanket. The entire staff was roused and maids dust in and out, praying his day's bed in his night bed, favorite cushions, toys, and rubber rings. Breakfast bowl, lunch bowl, super bowl, realizing that my car would ever never told all the stuff. I start to drive away as I moved off Mr. Pofre with a despairing cry. Threw an armful of the little coats through the window. I looked in the mirror before I turned the corner. On off the drive, was everybody was in tears. Out on the roads, I glanced down at the pathetic little animal gasping on the seat by my side. I patted the heat of Tricky, made a brave effort to wag his tail. Poor old lad, I said, you have not a kick in you, but I think I knew a cure of for you. All at the surgery, the household dogs circuit around me. Tricky looked down at the nosy pack with the dull eyes, and when put down, lay motionless on the carpet. The dogs, after sniffing round him for a few seconds, decided he was an until interesting object and ignored him. I made up a bed for him in a warm loose box next to the one ever the other dog slept. For 2 days I kept an eye on him, giving him no food but plenty of water, and at the end of the second day he started to show some interest in his surrounding, and on the third he began to vampire when he had the dog in a yard. When I opened the door, Tiki trotted out and was immediately in engulfed by Joe, the greyhound, and his friends. After rolling him over and thoroughly inspecting him, the dogs moved off down the garden. Ricky followed them, rolling silently with his surplus pet. Later that day, I was present and finding time. I watched while Tristan spilled the food into the bowls. There was the usual headlong rush, followed by the sounds of high speed eating. Every dog knew that if he fell behind the others, he was liable to have some competition for the last part of his meal. When they had finished, Ricky took a walk around the shining bowls, licking closely inside one or two of them. Next day, an extra bowl was put out for him, and I was pleased to see him jostling his way towards it. From then on, his progress was rapid. He had no medical treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in their friendly. He discovered the joys of being bout of overtimed on and excused. Every few minutes he became an expected member of the gang, an unlucky, silky little object among the shaggy crew, fighting like a tiger of his share of meal times and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. He had never had such a time in his life. All the all the while, Mr. Puffrey had hovered exclusively in his background, training a dozen times of a day for the latest bulletins. I dodged the questions about whether his cushions were being turned regularly on or her or his correct coat one according to the weather, but I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and concluding rapidly. The words concluding seemed to do something to Mr. Puffre. She started to bring round fresh eggs on 2 dozen at the time to build up Tricky Street for a happy period. My partners and I had 2 eggs each for breakfast, but when the bottles of wine began to arrive, the real possibilities of the situation being to down on the household, it was too rich, tricky blood. Lunch became too criminal occasion with 2 glasses of wine before and server during the meal. He could hardly believe it when the Grandi come to the final age of tricky constitution for a few nights. The fine spirit was rolled around in handle and reverently drunk. There they were days to deep content starting with the extra eggs in the morning improved and situation by the midday wine and finishing luxuries round in the fire with the Bradley. It was a temptation to keep Ricky on as a permanent guest, but I knew Mr. Puffrey was suffering, and after a fortnight, felt complete to the phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was ordering collection. Within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal drew up outside the surgery. The chauffeur opened the door, and I could just make out the figure of Mr. Puffrey almost lost in the interior. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of fear. Her lips trembled. Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Is he really better? Yes, yes, he is fine. There's no need for you to get out of the cards. I will go and fetch him. I walked through the house into the garden. A mash of the dogs was hurtling round and round. The low and in the rear midst, ear flapping, tail waving, was the little golden figure of Tricky. In 2 weeks, he had been transformed in, into a little hard, muscled animal. He was keeping up well with the packs stretching out in the great bones, his chest almost brushing the ground. I carried him back along the passage to the front of the house. The chauffeur was still holding the car door open, and when the tricky saw his mistress, he took off from my arms in a tremendous leap and sailed into Mr. Puffrey's lap. He gave a startless "oh" and then had to defend herself as he showed over her, licking her face and barking. During the excitement, I helped the chauffeur to bring out the beds, toys, cushions, coats, and bowls, none of which had been used as the car moved away. Mr. Puffrey leaned out of the window, tears shone in her the lips trembled. Oh, Mr. Harriet, she cried. How? Can I ever thank you? This is a triumph of surgery. Thank you.